Have you ever felt a sudden stirring in your soul at 3 a.m., as if something or someone was calling you? Not a sound, not a noise, but a holy pull on your spirit. It's not just insomnia. It's not just a restless night. It's an invitation. While the rest of the world sleeps, heaven opens its gates, and someone like you is being summoned. Why? Because God does his deepest work in the quietest hours. There is a sacred moment that stretches between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., a sliver of time when the earth grows still, the noise of daily life fades away, and a divine silence begins to cover everything. In those quiet hours, time itself seems to slow down. It's not just the absence of traffic or technology, it's as if heaven bends closer to the earth. Not to meet the proud, not to crown the perfect, but to draw near to the broken-hearted, the weary, the desperate, and the obedient. Right. Now some of you are feeling it. You've been crying out behind closed doors, longing for a change you can't quite describe. You've begged God for clarity, pleaded for peace in your marriage, interceded over your children, whispered prayers into the darkness of your soul, hoping someone in heaven is listening. And what if I told you the door you've been waiting to open is not locked at all? It's been unlocked the entire time, simply waiting for you to knock while the world remains asleep. So don't you dare click away. Stay with me till the end, because I'm going to share something precious with you, a secret prayer. A short, blazing prayer that has shifted the lives of thousands of women. A prayer hell dreads, a prayer heaven honors, a prayer the enemy hopes. You'd never speak aloud. This is more than a routine. This is a moment of divine confrontation. Between 3 and 5 in the morning, spiritual realities intensify. Demons are released into the night. Depression sharpens its teeth. Fear whispers louder. But do you know what else happens? God walks through homes during these hours. He listens. He watches. And he waits for one woman, just one, to rise up out of bed and say, "Here I am, Lord, I'm listening." That simple declaration can shake eternity. This is not fantasy. This is not superstition. This is not some emotional folklore. This is spiritual warfare. This is real power. This is where your prayers become fire. This is the moment where heaven begins to shift, because you moved first. You decided to get up even when you were tired. You dared to pray when it felt pointless. And God, he never ignores faith like that. Let me tell you what happens when a woman prays at that hour. When a wife whispers heaven's words over her sleeping household, angels begin surrounding her walls. When a mother pleads for her children in the dark before dawn, chains begin to break. Addictions lose their grip. Fear backs away. When a single woman kneels in silence, seeking God's direction, clarity comes, not as a whisper, but like thunder rolling through her soul. You are not powerless. You are not invisible. You are not forgotten. But sometimes, heaven isn't waiting for a louder voice. It's waiting for an earlier one. And when you speak the secret prayer I will share with you before this message ends, prepare yourself. Something will shift. Your home will not remain the same. Your peace of mind will not remain the same. Your future will not remain the same. This is not a motivational speech. This is a divine encounter waiting to be unlocked. So don't scroll away. Don't silence what your spirit is feeling right now. Stay with me, because I'm about to give you something that will unlock a dimension of the supernatural you've never experienced before. Something simple, something powerful, and yes, something dangerous to the kingdom of darkness. There is a mystery woven into the early morning hours between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., a veil that thins, a spiritual realm that feels closer, more alive. And it's not just the stillness that makes it unique, it's the movement behind the stillness. Angels are not idle in those hours. Demons are not asleep. Heaven is watching. The unseen is stirring. There is a reason so many attacks and awakenings happen between those hours. It is a window, a portal, when the supernatural becomes tangible. And here's the beauty. It's not about superstition, it's about alignment, spiritual alignment. When your heart is postured to hear and your soul is ready to move, God often speaks. Not in chaos, not in a crowd, but in the hush, in the quiet, in the stillness of early morning when no one else is watching, when the noise is gone and the world fades into shadows, his whisper becomes unmistakably clear. That's why women who dare to wake at these hours are different. They carry something unique, a sacred oil, a heavenly fragrance, a spiritual strength that isn't loud, but it's undeniable. You can sense it in their presence. You can see it in the peace on their face. And it all began with a simple, obedient choice to rise early and meet with God when no one else would. Earlier, we saw how a woman's decision to rise before the sun carries a spiritual fragrance that heaven responds to. But now let's go deeper, because these women aren't just early risers, they are warriors of the night. These women are not just curious wanderers searching for a quick spiritual fix. They are intercessors, relentless, passionate, and deeply aware that true intimacy with God costs something. They understand that the Spirit of God is not restricted by the ticking of a clock. He's not moved by convenience, but he is deeply moved by sacrifice. So they rise, not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. When the body aches for more sleep, when the room is wrapped in shadows, when every part of you says, "Wait until morning," their spirit rises up and declares, "No, now is the time." And that's when the heavens begin to shift. That's when breakthroughs start to break loose, when chains weaken and atmospheres change. It's no coincidence that Jesus often retreated alone to pray in the stillness of early morning. It wasn't happenstance that revivals, real history-making revivals, often ignited in prayer gatherings that started before the sun even peaked above the horizon. Why? Because there's unmistakable power in the still, surrendered voice of someone who chooses the secret place while others are still sleeping. And there's even greater power in the woman who boldly says, "I will rise when others choose to rest. I will pray when others scroll. I will seek the face of God while he may be found." Because those hours between 3 and 5 a.m., they're sacred. They're open heavens. There's something otherworldly about that silence. It's not just the world around you that quiets. It's your own soul. Your thoughts stop racing. Your heart slows down. You begin to breathe deeply. Again. And in that holy hush, God leans in, not searching for the most articulate, not drawn to the strongest or the most composed, but looking for one voice to rise and say, "Here I am, Lord." Women share a deep and intimate connection with the heart of God, and when they rise to pray while darkness still clings to the sky, the atmosphere responds. It's like heaven leans forward. It's not about praying perfectly, it's about surrendering completely, and there's no moment more ripe for surrender than the beginning of the day, before the noise, before the phone, before the world has a chance to pull you away. He's not hiding. He's never been hiding. He's been there all along, just waiting for a daughter to rise in the dark. Why does he move most during this time? Because faith is required. Because sacrifice is demanded. Because this kind of prayer isn't convenient, it's costly. And that's what makes it powerful. In those moments, your words are no longer just prayers. They become weapons. That's when your tears become holy seeds planted into the soil of eternity. That's when the whispers of God are finally heard. Direction you missed before. Answers that escaped you in the rush of the day. Healing that quietly begins to take root. Women who rise early to pray aren't doing it to be noticed. They're not chasing a spiritual image. They're chasing heaven. They do it because something in their spirit knows that these hours hold eternal weight. It's not about a habit. It's about hunger. It's not about religion. It's about revelation. And do you want to know why the enemy works so hard to keep you asleep during those hours? Because he knows. He knows what happens when you wake up. He knows your voice carries spiritual authority. He knows your prayers carry divine fire. He knows that a woman who dares to intercede between 3 and 5 a.m. is a threat to his entire kingdom, because when she prays, heaven listens. And what about the secret prayer that rises during this time? It's not elaborate, it's not flowery or long-winded, it's not read from a script or practiced from memory. It's raw, it's real, it comes from the depths of a woman's soul, the kind of prayer that doesn't need perfect words because it carries the weight of pure intention. It doesn't need volume because it carries urgency. It doesn't need beauty because it carries truth. This is not a performance. It's a release. Sometimes it's a whisper. Other times it's a groan. Often it's tears falling silently onto your pillow in the dark, and still it reaches heaven. While the world slumbers and darkness still paints the sky, God is listening. But he's not listening for poetry. He's not waiting for elegance. He's listening for truth, truth spoken from a surrendered heart. This prayer is not about asking for more. It's not a wish list. It's a surrender list. It's the moment. A woman says, God, I don't have it all figured out, but I give you everything. I give you my heart. I give you my mind. I give you my children. I give you my future. And when that kind of prayer rises, something divine begins to unfold. Chains don't just loosen, they rattle. Strongholds don't just tremble, they start to fall. Because God doesn't move at the sound of noise. He moves at the sound of faith. This prayer can't be faked. It's not for show. It's not rehearsed. It's lived. It's born out of the fire of desperation and trust. It's prayed in silence, with hands lifted, cheeks wet with tears, and a soul that says, even if no one sees me, I know heaven does. When a woman rises in the early hours, she's not performing for applause, not surrounded by music or an audience. There is no spotlight, only silence. But that silence carries power, because between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., the words she speaks carry a spiritual weight that cannot be measured in volume. Her whispered prayers pierce through darkness. They silence demonic voices that have tormented her mind. They break the spirit of fear that once kept her paralyzed. Her voice, though soft, commands the peace of God to invade her home, her heart, and her family. Many women go through life without ever discovering the authority hidden in this kind of prayer. They never realize the access they've had all along. Access to supernatural strength, to divine clarity, to God's healing presence. But those who do rise, those who choose to speak, to cry out when the world is asleep, they become different. They become women who walk in spiritual authority. They don't need to shout. They don't need to explain. Their boldness isn't loud, it's lived. It shows in how they carry themselves, in the peace that surrounds them, and in the wisdom that flows from their lives. Heaven always answers the woman who prays in the quiet before the storm. She isn't defined by what she wears or how she looks. She's defined by the power she carries, power that comes from the Holy Spirit. These women who have embraced the sacred hours between 3 and 5 a.m. are not ordinary. They've been transformed. They don't just talk about faith, they embody it. Their lives are wrapped in a quiet strength that draws attention without seeking it. It's something you feel when you're near them. It's something you sense even when they say nothing. Because when a woman rises early to seek the Lord, something supernatural takes place. She begins to carry a kind of spiritual oil that can't be bought, earned, or imitated. This oil doesn't come from striving. It comes from intimacy. It's the fragrance of a relationship with God, forged in the quiet, when no one is watching. These women are no longer tossed around by every emotional storm. They aren't trapped in cycles of anxiety, fear, or confusion. Why? Because they've encountered the living God in the hidden place, and their lives now reflect the unshakable peace that only He can give. Marriages that once seemed like they were unraveling are held together again. not by effort alone, but by the presence of God invited in through prayer. Children who were wandering, lost in rebellion, confusion, or despair, begin to return. Not just physically, but spiritually, their hearts start to align with God's plan. Why? Because a mother interceded in the stillness when no one else could see. Health battles, whether emotional wounds, mental fatigue, or physical diagnoses, are faced with renewed courage and divine intervention. These women have learned not to carry burdens alone. They've learned to lay it all at the feet of Jesus before the first light of day. And heaven responds. Does this mean they don't face pain? Of course not. These women are not immune to struggle. They walk through valleys just like everyone else. But the difference, they walk with a reservoir of strength that others don't see. They draw from a deeper well. They've tapped into a spiritual source that never runs dry, because they know. The secret, victory isn't always won in front of a crowd. It's won in the quiet, in the dark, in the sacred moments when the rest of the world is still sleeping. That's where God forges character. That's where he deepens faith. That's where he gives anointing, not just for the moment, but for a lifetime. The stories of these women are endless. Testimony after testimony speaks of transformation, healing, restoration, and the common thread in all of them. They met with God when no one was watching. They chose the secret place, and God honored it. That's why the enemy fights so hard, to keep you asleep during those hours. He knows exactly what's at stake. He knows what happens when you rise. He knows the damage you can do to his plans when you begin to pray with fire. He knows your voice carries weight in the spiritual realm. And so he whispers, sleep a little longer, it's too early, you're too tired. But don't listen, because when a woman wakes up before dawn and seeks the face of God, she doesn't just change her morning. She disrupts darkness. She confuses hell. She breaks generational curses. She doesn't just protect her family. She becomes a threat to every demonic plan assigned to them. The Bible says the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And he does it in subtle ways, through distraction, delay, discouragement. But Scripture also declares that the gates of hell will not prevail against the church. And that includes you. When you rise to pray between 3 and 5 a.m., you become a frontline warrior. You're not just whispering prayers into your home, you're shifting the spiritual atmosphere of your entire life. You're sending a message to heaven and hell that you're not backing down. You're standing in the gap. You're fighting battles that others don't even know exist. And God, he sees you, he hears you, and he responds. She is not just praying, she is shifting the spiritual atmosphere around her. Every word she speaks in the early dawn carries power that reaches far beyond her immediate sight, and the enemy knows it. That's why he trembles. He recognizes the authority in her voice when she prays between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. He sees her shutting doors he once opened, closing access points he once used to attack her mind, her marriage, her peace. He watches as she binds the very demons he sent, commanding them to flee. He sees her become the gatekeeper of her home, allowing only the presence of God to reign where chaos once ruled. That early morning prayer is not just a ritual, it's her armor. It becomes a spiritual shield, covering everything that matters. Most to her, it guards her family, it strengthens her marriage, it surrounds her children, it protects her finances and secures her future. With every whispered word, with every surrendered tear, she is building a fortress around her life that hell cannot penetrate. And because of this, the enemy tries everything to keep her from rising. He whispers lies in the dark. You're too tired. You need more rest. You can always pray later. But she knows better. She knows this is the real battleground. When she refuses to listen to the voice of comfort, when she chooses obedience over convenience, something powerful happens. She becomes unstoppable. Heaven doesn't just hear her. Heaven responds. Hell doesn't just notice, hell trembles. The enemy understands that when a woman prays in those sacred hours, she invites the manifest presence of God into her life in a way that cannot be undone. This isn't temporary, this isn't emotional, this is eternal. This is holy territory, and when she walks into it, the devil has no room left to move. But what happens when this isn't just a one-time event? What happens when a woman makes it a lifestyle to pray between 3 and 5 a.m.? The transformation is undeniable, even miraculous. It begins inside her. Confusion that once clouded her mind starts to lift. Life decisions that once overwhelmed her now become manageable, even clear. It's like a fog breaks apart at sunrise and suddenly she can see, not with her eyes but with her spirit. And this clarity isn't vague. It's not just a good feeling, it's divine insight, sharp, precise, heaven-born. It comes from being in the presence of the one who sees all things, who knows the end from the beginning. As she continues to meet with God consistently in these hours, she begins to notice answers, real answers, to prayers she once thought had been forgotten. It's as if God, seeing her faithfulness, accelerates the process. He opens doors, softens hearts, and aligns circumstances because he delights in her devotion. Her heart becomes synchronized with his will. The impossible starts to look possible. Not because her situation changed overnight, but because her perspective did. And from there, the effects ripple outward. Her household begins to change. Her relationships experience peace where there was once tension. Her marriage begins to breathe again. Walls that once divided are dismantled by unseen hands. Because there is power in the prayer of a woman who rises before the sun. Her words, carried in the quiet of the morning, shake the gates of heaven. And when heaven is shaken, blessings are poured out. Her children, those who have wandered, who've struggled with identity or rebellion, are drawn back by the gentle hand of God because she stood in the gap for them. Her prayer becomes their covering. Her intercession becomes their shield. And then comes the inner peace, the kind this world cannot offer. Fear that once ruled her mind begins to dissolve. Anxiety that gripped her heart loosens its hold. Doubt that shouted in her thoughts begins to fade into silence. She becomes a woman of unwavering strength. Not strength that she produced, but strength born from the secret place. Strength built in the presence of God, and it shows, it radiates from her. It transforms her from the inside out, and when this becomes more than a moment, when it becomes a holy habit, she steps into a new realm of spiritual power. Her life becomes a living testimony of what God can do through one woman who chooses to rise early, not just once, but daily. She doesn't chase favor, it finds her. She doesn't beg for grace, it covers her. She doesn't seek attention, yet people are drawn to her peace, her wisdom, her presence. This isn't earned. It's not performance-based. It's the overflow of what happens when a woman decides to meet with God in the hours no one else sees. He rewards what is done in secret, and her life becomes the evidence. So as we draw this message to a close, let me remind you of something simple but life-altering. God is still searching, still listening, still waiting. He's waiting for a daughter to rise before the sun does. He's waiting to meet you in the stillness of the morning, and everything can change. When you do, there is a power, quiet, unshakable, divine, that awakens in the stillness of the night. Not in noise, not in crowds, but in the sacred hours between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., when the world is asleep and distractions are silenced. These aren't just hours on a clock, they are holy ground, a window of opportunity when heaven leans in, listening closely, waiting for one voice. For the woman who dares to rise in those hours, who chooses to meet with her Creator while the world slumbers, something supernatural is set into motion. Her sacrifice doesn't go unnoticed. Her obedience doesn't go unrewarded. Her life begins to carry the unmistakable mark of God's favor. Not because she shouted loudest, not because she had all the answers, but because she simply said, "Yes, Lord, here I am." And then the shift begins. Her prayers are no longer mere words. They become weapons, sharp, precise, heaven-forged. They tear down strongholds that have held her family captive for years. They break generational chains. They speak life into dead places. They release blessings that have been waiting behind closed doors. The enemy cannot stand against a woman who prays at dawn. He recognizes her voice, and he trembles, because when she speaks, she's not just talking, she's calling on the name of the Almighty. And when the name of God is lifted in the quiet, His power responds. That power doesn't just comfort, it confronts. It doesn't just soothe, it shifts. It heals deep wounds no one else can see. It opens doors no man can shut. It brings light into corners of the heart long darkened by pain. In those early moments, when the sky is still wrapped in night and the world hasn't yet stirred, God reveals Himself in a way that is intimate and unforgettable. There's nothing else like it. No sermon, no song, no gathering can replace the power of meeting Him alone, before the noise, before the pressure, before the day even begins. And hear this. Truth. You don't have to be perfect to be invited into that moment. You don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need eloquent words or polished prayers. What God looks for is your heart, a willing heart, a surrendered heart, one that says, "I don't have all the answers, but I'm here. I'm listening. I'm yours." That's all it takes. One simple yes in the dark. When you choose to rise and give Him those first moments of your day, everything changes. Your life begins to shift into alignment with heaven. Your family comes under divine covering. Your future begins to reflect His plan, not yours, not the world's, but His perfect, beautiful design. So let this be your invitation. Let this be your starting point, not with a long prayer, not with fancy words, but with a simple decision, a choice to meet God before the sun does. Wake up tomorrow and whisper, "Here I am, Lord," and then do it again the next day and the next. Make it your rhythm, make it your refuge, because the moment you do, you'll begin to see it. God moving in ways you never imagined, doors opening, wounds healing, peace settling over your home, like morning light. You'll realize that your early morning prayers were never small, they were eternal. They were seeds planted in sacred soil, and their fruit will echo into eternity. So now, this is your time. Rise up, step into the quiet. Speak to the one who's been waiting for you. Heaven is listening, and your life will never be the same.